Good morning, and thank you for joining me for a special chapel chat. I'm Pastor Kevin Little, and this is the Shakespeare Garden at Garrett Evangelical Seminary. I was in the chapel, but they're tuning the organ right now, so I couldn't record. But I do have some pictures, so let's take a look at their chapel. First off, I think it's gorgeous. It has a fluid space for people to worship in. Rather than pews, there are chairs, but even the organ itself is mobile. Everything in this room, except for the walls, windows, and the organ pipes themselves, can be moved around to create different looks for different needs. I really like this approach for worship in general, and it's really cool to see it in what is, for all appearances, a traditional chapel. By the way, this pipe organ has over 2,200 pipes. I haven't heard it really be played yet, but even just tuning it sounds great in here. Oh yeah. Why am I in a different chapel today? I'm here because today is Pastor Emily's first day of school. And I drove her up here since we just got back into town from Minnesota last night. So while she's in class, I'm running all over the place causing problems. Now let's get on with our chat topic for today, which ties into our recent message series about what we believe. A friend of mine had reposted someone's statement about religion and faith. The general point of the statement was that just because I believe something, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone agrees, nor does it mean that my belief should control or influence what others do. For example, if I was a vegetarian, that doesn't mean that just because I don't believe in eating meat, that everyone else shouldn't be allowed to eat meat. Don't worry, I'm not a vegetarian though. This is just an example, but I do have a friend who's a vegetarian. I respect his decision not to eat meat, even though I am thoroughly convinced that he is wrong and should change his non-meat eating ways. I've known vegetarians who thoroughly believe that eating meat is bad for us as well as the animals we eat, and are happy to evangelize on the subject at length. But they've not tried to force anyone to change, at least to my knowledge. Now, we're using vegetarianism as an example here, but the root of this conversation is our faith as Christians. Matthew chapter 28, verse 19 tells us to go, therefore, and make disciples of all the nations. I think we're too focused on the word make and not enough on the word disciples, or even the next part where it talks about teaching them in verse 20. Rather than engaging with people where they are and having a conversation, we regularly tell them how to live their lives according to our beliefs. But often they don't have the same beliefs that we have. Do you remember that passage in the Bible where Jesus is shown walking around with an army and forces people to change their beliefs to line up with his? It's okay. I'll wait for you to come up with which one that is. No? Still can't think of it? Huh. I mean, that's weird because I was pretty sure it was in there somewhere. But we'll move on. We have this odd tendency as Christians, or people in general, to try and make the world the way that we want it to be. But that's not how Jesus did it. Jesus walked around and he talked with people and he told them his thoughts. He didn't force anything. He just invited people to listen to him, and they did. It's okay to believe in something passionately and to want to tell people about it, but they aren't always going to agree, even with something as important as their own personal salvation. And if we can't all agree on that, or even the need for it, how can we expect all of the other smaller things to be agreed on? Right now, our world is arguing about so many different things. We argue about sexuality, gender, religion, bacon, DC or Marvel, Star Wars or Star Trek, abortion, right hand or left, pinch hitters, driving the speed limit, Pepsi or Coke. The list just keeps going. And we argue because we have a certain belief about these topics, and obviously someone else has a different one. Now, how often does trying to force people to your way of thinking work for you? Wouldn't everything be better if we tried to do it Jesus' way? Maybe sit down over coffee or tea or water or Pepsi, definitely not Coke though, and have a conversation. Maybe we'd at least be able to see the other person's point of view and stop vilifying them in our heads. Maybe they'd come to appreciate our point of view and stop vilifying us. And maybe, just maybe, we'd find out that we have more in common and can stop making people feel bad when we discuss these things. Having a conversation doesn't mean that we are somehow less committed to our belief. It just means that we're open to actual discussion with another human being rather than shouting with no intention of hearing their position. Thanks for joining me for another chapel chat. I'll see you next week from our usual spot in the chapel in Rantoul First United Methodist Church. Have a great week.